Hello and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Allison, and today we'll be looking at an article entitled "Half of Women Have Been Dumped for This Toxic Reason." Now, the article itself was titled actually "Half of Women Have Been Dumped for this depressing reason," but I figure since it's attributed to toxic masculinity, that's what we'll talk about here. As always, if you would like to support the show, you can do so at feedthebadger.com/support. And if you'd like to send me a message at any time while the show is going because you enjoy or you're enjoying the content or you want to make commentary upon the content, or if you want to send me something esoteric that I'll scratch my head over, you can do so at feedthebadger.com/justthetip. We get the full benefit of whatever funds you send, and you get the benefit of sending your comment with a little bit more space and a little less YouTube censorship. So with that out of the way, hopefully this just a bit of a sound check with you guys. I've changed my system to be hopefully cat proof so that she can walk without touching my wires. And the hope is that that will prevent anything breaking in the middle of the stream. We'll see. We'll see. The cat has magical powers of breaking things. It's probably because she's a void cat. But regardless, let's get right into it. All right, here we go. Got to scroll up. This is from the metro.co.uk. So right off the bat, you know, it's incredibly trustworthy and totally describes reality. As you can see in the side here, if you've been following Honey Badger Radio, they even have a little bit of information for parents based on Netflix Adolescence, which reveals the dark emojis every parent should know. Oh man, the satanic symbolism in your child's Dungeons and Dragons game. Every parent should know about that. All right. Anyway, so getting into the actual article, I'm just saying that little sidebar thing just indicates the level of insight we are dealing with. All right, so half of women have been dumped for this reason. Toxic masculinity is alive and well, by Alice Giddings, published March 20th, 2025. It's not you, it's me is one of the generic explanations we often reach for when it comes to a breakup. But women have just revealed a far more alarming reason why they've been dumped by a partner. And this one rests squarely with men. Okay, so are there any reasons that women get dumped that don't rest squarely with men? I mean, even if she cheats on you, I'm sure somebody somewhere will say it's because you weren't man enough for her, or you didn't do X, Y, and Z, or you weren't emotionally available. So I'm just throw it out to the audience. Is there anything that when a relationship breaks up that's put on the woman at this day and stage? Like, anyway, nearly half of women, 44, I believe, that they've been broken up with because of their feminist views. You know, the movement fighting for equal rights and opportunities to our male counterparts. Yeah, that one. Yeah, the one that never measures the other side. So it never actually, like you're saying, well, women are not equal to men, but you never measure the men's side. So how do you know? I mean, you sort of have to measure both sides before you can draw an equivalence, but measuring men's side is done by deplorables like me, who are definitely not considered good people by the feminist movement. So I mean, honestly, if you're going to talk about equality, but you right off the bat shame anyone for measuring one side of the equality equation, are you really about equality, or are you about framing it in such a way that one group always gets the beanies? All right, here's the agent of chaos. Let's see if we can keep it contained. According to the global study by dating app Flirtini, this is some seriously serious research here. 62% of women also believe that being a feminist has made it more difficult to find a partner. Some men can feel demonized by a narrow or misinterpreted definition of feminism that portrays its anti-male, it portrays it as anti-male. Psychotherapist Naomi Magnus, founder of North London Therapy, tells Metro. So it's not that feminism is anti-male. It's that it's being unfairly portrayed as anti-male. Because it's not anti-male to look at things like domestic violence and sexual assault and assert that men use these things. In other words, they grape and beat their wives and sisters and daughters and mothers in order to uphold patriarchy, in order to uphold benefits to themselves. That is the feminist framework when it comes to those social issues, is that men use these violent behaviors, these violent and generally considered antisocial behaviors, to uphold benefits to themselves at the expense of their female friends and relatives. Of course, that's not anti-male, because that's just the truth, even though it's never been proven to any kind of scientific standard or rigor. But, no, and what I mean by that is feminism hasn't even been stated. The central conjecture of feminism hasn't even been stated in a way that could be proven true or false. Therefore, it's not even done the first step of being approached as a scientific concept, much less been proved. And in fact, the nebulous conjectures that they put forward, even though they haven't been stated in a way that could be proven true or false, when you actually form them into such a statement, they're false. And every time I've seen feminists try to make some kind of predictive statement based on their conjectures, it doesn't pan out, right? So a hypothesis becomes a theory when it proves its predictive power. So you can use this hypothesis to predict, input A, output B. You throw the apple up, the apple falls to the ground. So there's a causality. And when a hypothesis proves that it has predictive power, it becomes a theory. Feminism has proven the reverse. And usually that would mean everybody would be like, oh, well, this is a failed hypothesis, back to the drawing board. But not so with feminism. No, feminism gets infinite chances to prove that it's right, because it cannot be wrong. And yet, we cannot regard this supposition, this assertion by feminists that men use beating and grape on their female friends and relatives to uphold their privileges. We can't regard that as anti-male. Oh no, it's just the truth. This misunderstanding can cause defensiveness and resentment from some seeing feminism as an attack rather than a movement for equality. Guys, you should just accept the fact that you use beating and grape to uphold your privileges. You shouldn't question it. And if you do, you're anti-feminist and you hate women. And this is especially true if they encounter aggression or exclusion, which can create pushback from feminist ideals. I mean, like things like kill all men mugs and the future is female, and name the problem being male violence, right? That was a radfem campaign from way back. And it's not even criminal men, it's just all men. To understand why feminism seems so contentious right now, consider the wider political climate. I sense Trump. Not only is the US president the same man who said being famous meant he could grab women by the pussy. I notice how you truncate the quote, because the quote is actually grab women by the pussy, they let you. As a growing anti-abortion movement continues to gain momentum throughout the Western world, driven by women. Let's face it, it's women who are the predominant, die-hard anti-abortion activists. The majority of men actually agree with abortion to a limited time span, so prior to the second trimester. It's women who have an absolute 100%, like the majority of people who have an absolute 100% no abortion under any circumstances. Those are women. So those are the ones you're going to galvanize if you start talking about abortion as a woman's right, to go out and say, no, that's not true. I don't believe in this. Like the true die-hard anti-abortionists are majority women. I think almost like a 2-to-3 ratio. And I wouldn't even call the majority of men anti-abortion if they're okay with abortion, but with limits to the first trimester. Is that really anti-abortion? Of course, the abortion activists think that is. What can I say? Offering a glimpse into how the divide has bled into people's personal lives. The latest season of Love is Blind saw two relationships imploding as a result of differing ideologies, with Sarah Carton leaving her fiancé at the altar because of his traditional views, and Virginia Miller ending things with her husband-to-be after he refused to take a stance on abortion. So women are leaving men for their political views. How did you get almost to the altar without noticing that you were marrying someone who's more of a traditionalist? And ending things because he refused to take a stance on abortion. So in other words, she will only tolerate a man who agrees with her politically and has no opinions of his own. Not even the no opinion, right? I have no opinion. No, you only have my opinion. Otherwise, vamoose. Right now, the zeitgeist is abuzz with concerns about how teen boys view women too. You only have to look as far as the Netflix hit Adolescence, which follows Jamie Miller, a 13-year-old who murders his female classmate after being radicalized by incel culture. He was also bullied by her, but let's not talk about that. And they actually put that in, but I guess that doesn't matter. Her bullying is a free action. She's a girl, after all. He represents the swaths of young men who have been Tate-washed by radical misogynistic views online, like those espoused by influencer Andrew Tate, who previously said there's no such thing as an independent female. Well, considering how the women who talk about empowerment also seem to, without any kind of sense of irony, talk about how men have thrall and influence their opinions, or actually dictate their opinions. Patriarchal thrall, masculine thrall. Men use their thoughts to make women obey. I mean, if you're going to have these kinds of conversations, if you're going to assert this kind of crap because you don't want to be held responsible for your own actions, then I think it's a pretty reasonable statement to say that, that doesn't, and these are the empowered women. These are the ones who are like, I don't need no man. Well, you certainly do need a man to blame. And that is a complete lack of independence. So it seems like more of an observation than misogyny, but I guess observations are misogyny in this day and age. According to Ipsos in King's College London, about 20% of UK men aged 16 to 29 look favorably on Andrew Tate, while 70% of teachers have reported a rise in sexist language and behavior in 2024. And I'm sure shaming boys based on a Netflix fantasy is going to improve their attitude towards their female teachers in society. It's like you hit a boy and the boy says, ouch. And then you're like, oh, look at that misogynist. How dare he imply that I hit him? This is spiraling the drain. UK, you're not a country, you're a joke. And also, if it's only 20% of UK men aged 16 to 29 look favorably on Andrew Tate, isn't that a minority? Like 80% don't? Although high-profile women, Angela Rayner and Michael Obama, to name but two, have managed to succeed professionally despite this adversity, that doesn't always translate to success in the dating world. Angela Rayner and Michael Obama. Women's success only started 10 years ago. Did you know that, guys? Like 20 years ago. Well, Michael Obama? Didn't she just get into like
Michelle Obama, Allison?
Michelle, like, oops. I'm sorry. Michelle Obama. Didn't she just get into the spotlight because of her husband? Like, marrying fame is not something new for women. That's something that's happened since time immemorial. Marrying fame or money, or marrying a king, or marrying someone who's famous and thus, receiving reflected fame is not unique. I don't know who Angela Rayner is. Maybe people can inform me. In fact, 72% of women believe that this success is intimidating to potential boyfriends. I actually looked at some Flirtini surveys. I'm trying to get the right word. They're not really scientific, but they essentially just poll their users. And one of them found that the vast majority of men are okay with dating a woman who makes more than them. Probably even more okay if she doesn't make it a issue in the relationship and decide that he's not man enough for her. So the fact that many women believe this success is intimidating, is it accurate? I mean, even Flirtini, which is their source for this particular article, doesn't find that that's true. So maybe the women believe it, but why don't you just say, well, it's not necessarily true? As long as you don't make it a point to see yourself as better as your partner because you're more successful or make more money, then men apparently won't have a problem. At least Flirtini's audience won't. It's just the same audience, I believe, that found that men don't want to date a feminist. See, this is what's confusing me. Flirtini did two surveys, and I know that the second survey I don't have up here. But the first found that women felt like their feminism was an impediment to dating, and their success was an impediment to dating. And the second found that most men are okay with successful women, and even women who make more than them. So why wouldn't you simply report that these women's thoughts about the world are inaccurate? Their claims of victimhood are in fact oh, that's why, never mind. In fact, 72% of women believe that this success is intimidating potential girlfriends. Yeah, well, they can think that, but it doesn't make it true. Some men can feel a bit intimidated by successful women because of traditional gender roles that tie masculinity to being the main provider, therapist Naomi explains. They can make them feel insecure or worried about not measuring up. A woman's success can shake up their sense of identity and make them question their own achievements and what's expected of them, which can create challenges in relationships. So once again, Flirtini, which is their source, found that this wasn't the case with men. But despite men saying, no, this isn't a problem for us, they still insist on blaming men. And you know why? Because it's not a problem for men. It's a problem for the women. And if it is a problem for the men, it's because they know it's a problem for women. It's a problem for women that they are dating a partner who has less success, financial or otherwise, than themselves. Depressingly, in an effort to assuage these perceived anxieties men have, 61% of women have lied about their career and income, scared that revealing the truth would turn their date off. Well, I mean, I guess this article is just going to confirm those fears instead of telling them they aren't really true. However, Naomi suggests this is a bad idea because it prevents you from being your true self in a relationship, and due to the misunderstandings and resentment, dishonesty can cause further down the line. Women have also been slut-shamed in relationships. If dulling down achievements isn't enough, more than half, 59% of women have been criticized by their other half for not being feminine enough in terms of their appearance and behavior. Okay. Again, this is the women's appraisal of all this. Some men have also still have an issue with women embracing their sexuality, as a whopping 64% have been slut-shamed by their significant other for the way they dress or their sexual experiences. What does that mean? What is been criticized for the other half for not being feminine enough. Why don't you wear the summer dress today, dear? Would that be qualify as dread misogyny? And also, how is it that men are blamed for simultaneously disliking femininity, which I've seen plenty on Twitter, lots of upvoted female users saying that men hate all of their hobbies, all of their feminine interests, and yet they're also shamed for not being feminine enough. And yet tomboy still remains one of the most sought after archetypes of femininity. Okay. This sounds very regressionist, but Naomi says it's not surprising that perhaps more men than women seek traditional gender roles and have more dated views. But honestly, it is a little surprising because women were conservative throughout the majority of the 20th century. And it's only recently in the last 10 years that it's been flipped, that women have speed run into the left and that men have stayed relatively centrist. So I think it is actually a bit surprising because usually even women's vote was for the most part championed by men. Did that kind of, even that progressive value, like that fundamental progressive value, more men supported it than women. So it actually is a bit surprising. So the question is why? And I think honestly, it's because the left has become an excuse for every single id indulgence that women can engage in. All right. It's not really a principled position anymore. Both men and women can be interested in traditional roles in relationship, but society tends to push men towards those roles more often, she says. Men are still subject to selective service. They're still expected to die for their state. They're still 100% expected to provide for their children and their partner. Divorce is not no-fault divorce. Divorce is now man-at-fault divorce. Like, if you look at divorce in the past, the kind of things that were done, like, or expected of men, were expected of them when they were at fault. That hasn't changed. So it hasn't gone to a no-fault divorce where nobody's considered at fault. It's gone to automatic man-at-fault divorce, right? So women still get all the same things that they got when the man was the one who broke the relationship up. But now they can just break it up themselves or engage in all kinds of malfeasance. It doesn't matter. So this no-fault divorce is absolute bullshit. It's just man-at-fault divorce now. They've simplified it to that. All right. But yes, society does push men towards traditional gender roles. They're still expected to provide. They still have strict liability when it comes to providing for their children. Legally, men in the US still have to provide for their children, even if they were raped. So there is no way of getting out of that for men. And again, they still have those expectations of service to the state. So yes, society still pushes the same role on men. And yet women are liberated to do whatever their id desires. And people wonder why men are a little bit upset with that, because that has never been the case in human history. Men have never been liberated to do whatever their id desires, unless it's a situation where everybody is in severe, what's a good word for it? Depredation, like war, and there are no social constraints on anything. So there's never been a situation where society underwrote men's id ever, right? But this is what's happening now. Women can make whatever decision they want in their relationships, and they can have as many sexual partners as they want. They can engage in any kind of behavior. They can believe things like feminism, which is an invitation to treat your male partner like crap. I mean, what else is it? I mean, you're basically bringing war propaganda into your relationship with feminism, right? They can do all of that, and men still have to underwrite it. And yeah, I can understand why this is infuriating. There are strong expectations around masculinity that suggest men should be providers and decision makers. As a result, men must be more inclined to want that traditional dynamic, while women are generally looking for more equality in their relationships. Really? Is that what women are looking for? Is that what this whole I am the table is about? Let's both provide equally in our relationship. I don't think so. And what about this constant drumbeat of unfairness in the division of labor in relationships? Even though the U.S.'s General Social Survey, at least until they stopped noticing this or stop recording this, found that men do 4 hours of work more each week between paid and other forms of work, and that actually may be a significant underestimate based on the way that men look at how they work. So if a man puts clothing into a dryer and then pushes the button, he only counts the amount of work that it takes to put it in the dryer, push the button, and then fold it after. Whereas a woman counts putting it in the dryer, pushing the button, all the time it takes for the dryer to finish going, and then the folding afterwards. So what a task for a man, which is like 20 minutes, is an hour and a half for a woman. So that might be a huge exaggeration or underestimate, an exaggeration of the time women actually spend, and an underestimate of men's time. So, but still, it's 4 hours more a week that men do. And now, because the General Social Survey kept finding that over and over again, they went to emotional labor. Because they couldn't find actual physical labor, men were doing more of that. They went to emotional labor. So now if a woman listens to a man in her relationship, she's being hard done by. So what does this equality mean? And in fact, I have an anecdote from one of the Scandinavian countries that really depicts or really illustrates this. There was a woman who was a stay-at-home mother, and she decided to divorce her husband because she felt like it was an unequitable arrangement, like it was a traditional arrangement. Therefore, it was some kind of imposition on her or oppression of her. So she divorces her husband because she's upset that she's the stay-at-home. And she ends up marrying a woman. And she also stays at home. But now it's okay because it's not tradition. Oh, good Lord. Is that the kind of equality that we're talking about? An equality that's always a moving target for the man in the relationship? Oh, we need to aspire. Oh, Jordan J. I don't know who these people are. Take Elliot Donovan from this season of MAFS Australia, who had an extensive list of criteria for his bride, including that she was more of a homemaker and that she wasn't super opinionated or loud. He means abusive and doesn't allow him to have his own opinions. His list of demands received major backlash from viewers, but even when women try to conform to certain men's antiquated ideals, it seems to be a case of damned if you do, damned if you don't. If we care to have a partner who's financially stable, we get called gold diggers or deemed to be too demanding, which labels 36% of women have ascribed. Labels 36% of women have been ascribed. And Naomi explains that she's had a number of women come to her with generalizations about men after an abysmal dating app experience, which shape how they're feeling about men and what they expect from them. This then creates a self-fulfilling prophecy where men and women become further alienated from each other. Stereotyping can make dating really tough, says Naomi. If you want to be successful in finding love, much more compassion is needed from both sides. It's super important for men and women to talk openly about what they expect, their fears and their values, she adds. Showing each other empathy and understanding the ways is the way to go. Except all I've heard in this entire article is that men should shut up about what they want. I mean, I would say not feminist would be the baseline. And also not doesn't identify as feminist, doesn't use the feminist talking points to establish moral dominance in the relationship. That should be like step one for men. I mean, you have the right to make your own decisions about that, but I think, doesn't want to morally dominate me might be like the baseline for getting into a relationship with someone. Doesn't start off in a position where I am the enemy who needs to be controlled and corralled and told that he's wrong. That might just be the baseline, like not abusive, basically. I just wanted to go a bit more into men not wanting their partners to be feminist. And I'm pretty sure that means identify as a feminist. But I think men should probably, this is a suggestion. It's a suggestion. Men should go a step further and not accept feminist talking points, right? Because these feminist talking points, I'll use another example. My husband has a female relative who is quite a peach, and by peach I mean probably a sociopath. And at one point they got into an argument over something in his kitchen, well, our kitchen, and she attempted to use an appeal to patriarchy to win the argument and get him to shut up and concede to her, which I think amounted to him allowing her to do something that, you know, he shouldn't necessarily have to, like allowing her to borrow an item or conceding to some political position. And he just basically said, no, he just no-sailed that and said, no, it's the modern age. You don't get to use that excuse anymore. You lose. But the point is that women who don't even identify as feminists will use these talking points in order to extort control over men. They will say, oh, you want to establish a boundary? You know, you don't want to do what I tell you to do? Well, patriarchy, huh? Right? And they don't even call themselves feminists, but they still use it in that way. And I would say that this prohibition of dating feminists should also extend to the women who use the tools. And one of the reasons why I think that this is something that men need to do is precisely that. It is an exercise in being morally dominated, in justifying violating men's boundaries, in delegitimating their own desires for the relationship that they want. Okay? This stuff is toxic and it's abusive. And I mean, right off the bat, saying, like, getting into a relationship with someone who thinks you're the oppressor, oh, that's how does that evolve from that point? You are constantly in a state of having to prove to your partner that you're not evil. It sounds like a freaking nightmare. But these feminist talking points, they establish women's moral dominance over men by establishing men as being subhuman morally. I mean, where do you go with men use grape and beatings to keep women in line and keep their privilege? What is that but not an assertion that men have no morality and men are actually barely human, or only human in the most technical of terms, right? And if you're bringing that into the relationship, the only place it can go is more controlling, more abusive, and totally justified by this individual's ideology. And if you complain, you're a patriarchal controller. And here's the other thing. This is something interesting that my editor brought up. People are attracted to those who they feel are morally more developed than themselves. So when a woman comes into a relationship believing that she is in a relationship with her moral inferior, she will not sustain an interest, a romantic interest in that man. So feminism is imploding relationships by making women believe that they're getting in relationships with their moral inferiors, that men who they can morally subjugate, but then they will lose all desire for those men because they can morally subjugate them, because they consider them morally inferior. So getting into a relationship with a woman with this belief system, because it's not just feminists, is a fool's errand, because there is no relationship there. There can be no relationship there. All right, so that's what I wanted to say about that. I'm going to see how you guys are chatting, see what you're saying, and if you have any words. Okay, let's see. First, I will check the super chows. Once again, if you want to send me no super chows, feedthebadger.com/justthetip if you want to send me a super chow. Come on, guys, send me a super chow. I really appreciate those. They're a little bit, it's actually a lot easier for me to keep track of the super chows than the super chats. The super chats sort of disappear periodically, and I don't know why. John Francois gives us 2.49 euros, very specific amount, and says, you guys work hard for a good cause. Have this. Thank you. I appreciate that. And let's see if there's any super chows here. Oh, the vertical chat is always very special. Let's see what they're up to. Oh, did somebody get upset? Oh, you mean like how men treat women? La Mao, projection at its finest. I think you should stop regurgitating alt-right talking points like you have any clue what you're talking about. These aren't alt-right talking points. Conservatives still have a lot of these attitudes as well. And conservative women can have these attitudes. In fact, prior to the election, we had a whole bunch of conservative women trying to shame a criticism of the voting patterns of women and saying, if you don't shut up about this criticism, we'll vote for Kamala or whatever, or we won't vote. And so they made it about their feelings. It's like, it's neither alt-right nor left to blame women and to hold them responsible for their behavior. It's its own completely different thing. All right. Lamau, y'all need help for real. Women are not the source of all your problems. Yeah, well, I disagree. Women are generally the source of my problems because I'm a woman and the majority source of my problems is me. Thank you. I prefer to see it that way because that gives me power over my life. Oh, wait, she left. Enjoy your echo chamber. You know what? This is hilarious when people come in and then they're like essentially saying something that is contrary and then they call it an echo chamber. Well, you're allowed to speak here. How is it an echo chamber? All right. Anyway. Okay, let me double check the super chows. Come on, guys. Give me a super chow. Feedthebadger.com/justthetip. Hey, Brian, did you want to chime in on any of this? Have you been listening? I know you're busy.
No, I've been listening. Well, I guess it is funny that people are like, they don't do you even know what the word echo chamber means? Like, literally, we're out here publicly talking to whoever wants to listen, and they can say whatever they can. You just don't have an argument, so you just sort of make this ridiculous claim. Oh, you're in an echo chamber. Just respond to what's being said, okay? That's all. Try that. Try something novel. Respond to the argument.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is no response, really. Like, how do you justify this? Like, how do you justify feminism? Let's be honest. How do you justify an ideology that asserts that men use grape and beatings to maintain their privilege over their female relatives? How do you justify that as not anti-male? And furthermore, it's not scientific. Like, the only defense of that is if it were true, but it isn't. It 100% is not true. There's never been evidence to its accuracy, not the least of which is we have all of this evidence that women are more controlling, women engage in just as much domestic violence, and it's entirely within the realm of reason that women engage in just as much rape, right? And then there's no evidence that people have any particular consideration towards men relative to women. And in fact, it's the reverse. Women have more in-group bias. Women like women more than men like men, which incidentally is seen with other groups that are privileged, like white Christian groups. Well, maybe not white Christians, but not white liberals. So let me make that distinction. Christians feel that they like Christians more. People who've gone through university, they like people who've gone through university more. So people who have privilege, or in some cases, you could see them as having attained something notable, they like each other more. Rich people like rich people more than poor people like poor people, stuff like that. So that is consistent with women liking women more than men liking men. So there's no evidence that men would privilege other men. at all. And in fact, men like women more than men like men. So on every possible angle, feminist conjecture has been disproven, and yet it shambles on like some undead lizard trying to find chicken eggs. I don't know. Like it's just insane. And then people say, "Oh, you question that. You're part of an echo chamber." Really? Okay.
I mean, that's just an ad hominem, Allison.
Yeah.
Really, it's
Yeah.
it's just not an argument.
Yeah.
And
All right.
I think it just upsets people because you're saying something that no one's considered. That,
Mhm.
like, just because you're saying, well, here's the thing that women do, and immediately everyone's like, what about men though? No, we talk about men like all the time. Like, turn on your TV, turn
Yes.
on the radio, go anywhere on the internet, and no one is making excuses for men who are evil or do bad things or are poor,
No.
bad behavior. Nobody. But you see, it's like a negative sum game is basically what it is.
Mm. Well, nobody's making excuses for men to do bad behavior, but when I say something like criminal men are a tiny minority, to just use a subset of criminal men, men who engage in rape are a tiny minority of men. Tiny. And it's looking like they're genetically distinct from normal men. So they have a different brain structure from a normal man related to impulse control, right? So, and in combination with having these genetic abnormalities, these developmental deficits in their brain, they've also likely been abused, right? So this is a really small, very distinct subset. And just to put it in perspective, it's more genetically distinct from the average man than gay men are from straight men. And yet feminists will look at this tiny, genetically distinct minority and say, this reflects all men, or men use their behavior to maintain society. No, it's genetically abnormal behavior. And even criminal men will punish rapists because it is an abnormality. There is more hatred by the average man towards rapists than there is towards gay men. Think about that. Think about it. All right. So, I mean, how is it that something that men almost universally hate, the sexual behavior of rapists, they're more universally hating and repulsed by it than they are from the sexual behavior of gay men, right? How is it that that has become their gold standard for a raging society, right? Answer that, feminists. That's another thing you need to answer. Okay. But yeah, and like I said, why would you invite something, if you were a man, why would you invite someone into your life who from the very start considers you to be her moral inferior, right? Who has put herself over you and has decided that she stands in judgment of all of your thoughts, your feelings, your behaviors, and the only standard in the relationship is her and her benefit. It sounds like a losing proposition. Not just that, but in putting herself in that position, eventually she will lose all interest in you. Yeah, yes, there are terrible men out there, and those terrible men should not be looked at and pointed to say, oh, this is all men. I mean, the latest one on feminist lips is, of course, the Adolescence movie. That's a fictional account, right? And I mean, I'm not going to, we just got accused of being far right talking points, but I'm not going to blanket condemn immigrants. Most of the men coming over are just putting their head down and working for their society. And there are reasons why this is just a bad idea, right? That bringing men in from cultures that are incompatible is just a bad idea. It has nothing to do with those men as a whole being bad. There's just incompatibilities that need to be addressed before it works. And we have people who are just plugging their ears in and calling any statement like that racism. But look at adolescents. They've constructed a complete fiction around a case that involved an immigrant, and they turned it into a white boy, and now they're making policy on it. So not only do men have to answer for the criminal activities of men that they loathe and hate, who are a minority, both genetically, in terms of their brain development, in terms of the abuse in their past, in terms of their genetics, now men have to answer for fictional characters? It's getting ridiculous. All right. Okay. Once again, feedthebadger.com/justthetip. Nobody sent anyone in. All right. But you can do so after the show if you like. Feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And if you want to support the show, feedthebadger.com/support. And I suppose because I am the one who's heading the show, I got to do the things. So comment, share, because sharing is caring. I think that's what Brian usually says. And that really helps us out. That helps the channel out. And thank you all for your kind attention. And I hope to see you in the next one. Please tell me in the comments if this sound works, because I think putting it up there actually prevents her from working her void magic on the cables. So tell me, give me an indication there. And thank you again for your kind attention and your patience.
Men's right activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.